Hello. Let's talk about reversing the feedback loop. That's right, reversing the feedback loop. We typically think based on what our senses are feeding to us. You know, what we see, what we hear, what we feel, and we absorb that data and we, in our minds, determine what is possible, what's not possible, how we are not, how we should be, how we shouldn't be. And we're basing all of that on the feedback, the incoming data from what our senses are detecting. Let's say, for example, that you're not getting a positive response from a particular situation or person or group. And so then the feedback from that your senses are detecting, your mind can then interpret that there's something wrong with you, that you're not enough, that there is something that's a deficit in you. And I'd like you to reverse the feedback loop there. Not to deny the reporting that you're getting from your senses, but to begin to reverse the feedback loop. What you do is that you impart, you provide, you fuel and feed your senses. And so what do you fuel and feed your senses with? Well, since your mind is independent of your senses, it utilizes your senses, but since your mind is independent of your senses, you can determine what your senses are to be used for, rather than your senses using you. And how that is done, this is reversing the feedback loop here, is that you recognize that fundamentally and essentially you are worthy. Not because you've earned it, not because you've been told that, not because you necessarily feel that, but that fundamentally the nature of your existence is a very worthy reality because of the fact that you're here. And you would not be here were you not worthy of existence. So you're worthy, fundamentally speaking. So then that's what you feed to your senses. You feed to your perception. You feed to your feelings. You feed to what you hear, that anything contrary to your worthiness or interpreted as less than being worthy, you're not going to absorb that feedback from the senses. You're not fighting it. You're not combating it. You're reversing the feedback loop. You are recognizing that because your mind is independent of your senses, that you can feed the senses rather than absorb what the senses by default are feeding to you. So from this place of worthiness in your mind, you feed your senses that you are worthy to fulfill anything in your life that fulfills a sense of purpose, a sense of enjoyment, a sense of contribution. You feed this to the perception of yourself. You feed this to the senses and how you feel. You feed this to your feeling. You're not denying your feelings. You're reversing the feedback of absorbing how you presently feel, if it's not necessarily encouraging or empowering, and you're reversing the feedback loop by recognizing you are worthy, and you begin to feed that to the emotions. You feed that to your sense of yourself, and that's reversing the feedback loop. So again, you're not fighting something, you're not denying something, you're not suppressing anything, you are reversing the feedback loop. You are determining, you are deciding that your worthiness is what's going to fuel your perception, your worthiness is what's going to fuel your feelings, your worthiness is what's going to fuel what you hear in your own thoughts about yourself, and what you tend to pick up when you hear the information and the static that you're hearing is subject to, that you are filtering out. Anything that you're hearing filters in as feeding you that you are less than or that you are not enough. You're filtering out those kinds of absorption as you reverse the feedback loop. So in reversing the feedback loop, you are deciding that you're going to, in part, deliver to your senses that you are worthy. You're going to impart and deliver to your sense of understanding and hearing of your own thoughts. You're going to have those thoughts impart that you are worthy to fulfill, you are worthy to satisfy, you are worthy to contribute. And as you reverse that feedback loop, then your senses begin to serve your worthiness. And you find that your confidence, you find that your follow through, you find that your sense of peace about yourself, that the senses are detecting and experiencing and feeling these things because that is what your mind has fueled them. That's what your mind has delivered to them. So we're reversing the feedback loop here. This is Hypnotherapist Isaiah McGee. Reverse the feedback loop.